problem with us is our market is so dependent on oil that like our housing prices were going up and down and up and down and up. And like there wasn't really another major sector. And so now the government actually, thankfully, is finally doing a better job of diversifying our economy so that we're not going to be so susceptible to oil prices going up and down, because they always do.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Steve, you're okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, my head looks way bigger than yours, and it is, so I guess that's okay. But yeah,
I don't know about that.
If you lean in and get passionate, go for it.
Okay.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tom Storey Show, your weekly real estate roundup podcast. I appreciate you being here. This episode is sponsored by Realty Ninja. More on them later in the show. If you're watching us on YouTube and you have not already, make sure to subscribe. Steve, we've officially passed 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Honestly, like, we really, really appreciate that you guys are showing up every single week, whether you're listening on YouTube or audio. The fact that you spend your Sunday mornings listening to us fools, we will never take that for granted. On to this week's guest, Andrew Russell from Remax and Red Deer, Alberta. I didn't know where that was. I had to look on a map. Apparently, it's between Calgary and Edmonton. I've been asking him for years to show me how to grow a beard. He never did. So I actually shaved before this episode because I didn't want to have the patchy stuff going on. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's your beard's coming along nicely, buddy. Just keep going with it. You'll be fine.
One day I'll get there when I grow up. We've been talking for a while. I think it went back a year ago. We were chatting at a conference about getting you on the show. First of all, for people that don't know, like myself, like, listen, I'll be clear about this. I grew up in Toronto. The rest of Canada, I really don't know. What's Red Deer all about? How did you end up there?
Born and raised here. And my dad was here in Central Alberta region for basically ever. So yeah, our roots are all planted here. My family's all here. I've got half my family is in Quebec, actually, because my mom was French, but she was one of the early adopters that came to Alberta and never left a really long time ago. And otherwise, yeah, everybody's here. So I've never had a reason to leave.
And what does I know in Toronto what my life looks like. Steve knows what his looks like with the things that you can do. I've never been to Red Deer. Is it kind of like Calgary? Is it kind of like Edmonton? Like, where does it mix in between those two places?
Drastically smaller. So no traffic issues, which is great. You can get to anywhere in Red Deer in 20 minutes, even in rush hour, I say that lightly because we really don't have it. Like, we're just over 100,000 people here.
Okay. And
like Calgary's 1.6, 1.7, Edmonton's about 1.5 with all the suburbs. And so size wise, we're fractional. And what is there to do? Not a whole heck of a lot. You kind of drive to Edmonton and Calgary if you want to go do something really fun, but it's just it's small town living. And that appeals to me. Do
you support the Edmonton or Calgary hockey team? How do you choose?
I was going to say, is this Oilers or Flames? What do we do? Or is it just backyard fights constantly with neighbors?
Red Deer's, I actually find it's about 60% Oilers fans and about 40% Flames fans. But it's quite split. And honestly, like, if you go to Edmonton for an Oilers Flames game, the rink is like 50-50. So, and vice versa. Like, I went to a Flames, I had Flames tickets for a Battle of Alberta, and I'm in there wearing an Oilers jersey, and like, Oilers score, there's 15 people around me in our section all wearing Oilers jerseys. Like, it was, the cheering was just as loud for either team. So it's a pretty even split. But I'm an Oilers fan. I actually prefer Calgary as a city. I like Calgary as a city way more. If I was going to move to either one, I'd go to Calgary.
Why is that?
It's not even close.
Why?
I don't like the way Edmonton's laid out. I don't like the size of it. I don't like the road system there. I just find Calgary is a better planned, more thought out city. I think Edmonton is actually quite, like, the River Valley and stuff in Edmonton is quite nice, but Calgary overall I just find a more beautiful city. And Calgary downtown has actually done a stunning job, like, with all the architecture and the buildings they've put up down there. The other perk is you're only an hour from the mountains and some of the best skiing in the world in Calgary. So I'm 2 hours from it, so not so bad. You can still day trip it, but yeah, Calgary would be my choice.
One of the big news stories that we heard, beginning of pandemic and over the past few years is that people from Ontario and BC were moving to Alberta and they were infiltrating Calgary. A few people were going to Edmonton. Was the same thing happening in Red Deer, where a lot of people there are coming and buying the properties up, people that used to live in me and Steve's market?
Yeah, somewhat. Like it's different here just because, again, not everybody wants a small town. And what I'm finding is a lot of people that were suburbs of Toronto and Vancouver are coming to Red Deer because they just don't want to be in the big cities. Price wise, like we're way cheaper, like drastically cheaper than Calgary, quite a bit cheaper than Edmonton, and so. But our job base isn't nearly as big, so it just depends on what sector you're in. But typically, I'm finding we're getting a lot of like healthcare workers because there's lots of healthcare jobs here. A lot of fly-in, fly-out oil field workers, and actually lots of them were flying in, flying out in BC and Ontario to the oil sands or mines or whatever, and so they're just working remotely anyway. They can jump on a plane here and take off. So,
and are they keeping their houses where they came from and buying another one there because it's so much cheaper? Or are they fully moving their lives over?
Nope, not in my experience. They're fully moving their lives over. They're cashing out of their properties there, and they're buying one for half the price here.
Crazy. And then, so when you say a lot cheaper than Calgary and even cheaper than Edmonton, because Calgary and Edmonton compared to Toronto and Vancouver are like half the price for the average property. Where does that put Red Deer?
So Calgary, I actually went and did a little bit of research on this. Calgary median price right now is $635 for a single detached house.
Okay.
Red Deer median, or actually it's Central Alberta stat. But so Central Alberta stat, like we're $367 is our median single family detached home.
And did you guys see the crazy jump up during the pandemic? Like, were you at $250 in 2019? Like, what growth did you see?
No, we were at about, I think it was about 310. So it has jumped. Like everything here has jumped. We have no inventory. Like Red Deer right now is just under 300 listings, which is crazy. Like it's just nothing. And most of what's out there is not great. So it's kind of the same struggle everywhere. And it's just largely because, we've got all these people coming in. Like the growth stats for Alberta. So from July 1st, 22 to 23, there was 184,400 people that moved into the province.
Wow.
So it's the largest gain in population of any province in Canadian history.
Like percentage wise from where you guys were at for that many people coming? In
that period of time, yeah. Like it's been such a huge bump. And it's funny because in 2015, when oil crashed, it was mass exodus. Everybody was leaving. All my clients, like I'd sell houses and there was no buying in on the other side because they were going back to Ontario. They're going back to East Coast, all over the place. So everybody was leaving. So now they're all coming back.
Steve, why don't we get into the oil conversation early in the podcast? We had just put up a survey on the channel. I'll let Steve take
survey.
The survey.
So good.
You'd be very interested in this. Yeah. Do you want me to bring it up?
Tom? No, filibuster. I'll bring it up.
Okay. So basically, we had asked the audience of this show, we ran a survey on our community tab about what we thought Canada should do moving forward in terms of being a world leader in oil or going the other direction. And I would say it was kind of interesting, the results.
How this is almost as good as one of those polls that they do on the mainstream media because it's about the same amount of people. 142 answers, that is. How do you feel Canada should deal with energy and oil? So here are your options. 1, increase oil production and become a world leader. 2, increase both oil and renewable energy production. 3, stop oil and only focus on renewable. And the surprise maybe in the poll, lead the world in fairy dust and vegan protein. So, which
you
one
could
of
tell
those,
Steve put those answers out there.
Given those, Tommy, what's your? Well, I mean, we don't have to go far to find out what the Albertan's going to say, I would assume. So one is go all in on oil. One is, hey, let's get a healthy balance. One is let's do this green thing and go renewable. Tommy, where do you stand?
I would be somewhere in the middle on the healthy balance. I think it's clear that we shouldn't be paying other countries. And when I fill up my car, I yell at my credit card every time I put it in. Me and Steve, everything we talk about is gas. Like, can you believe what gas was today? But I also know I come from another side of the country where the thinking is different and you grow up with the thinking that you had from your parents. So my answer would be, this is the most political answer ever. I'm somewhere in the middle.
So you don't want to increase. You want to maybe stay where you're at and then increase renewable energy.
Well,
So
I would say a mix of both. I think we should still take back some of what we have access to, what we're not taking advantage of, but I don't think it should be 100% of everything that we do.
Okay, so B. Your answer is B, and 44% of the people agreed with you.
Okay.
Right, which is crazy. Now, how many agreed with Andrew, which is increase oil production, become a world leader?
We haven't even asked him his answer yet. We haven't even asked
from Alberta.
Yeah, don't just make assumptions there.
Okay, come on. Actually, one of my favorite things to do with Andrew at conferences is take a hard city dweller point of view and then battle with him, even though I don't agree with most of those things, but it is super fun. What do you think, Andrew? What is your answer? I want to see how many people agree with you. I'll give you the answer.
I'm actually with Tom. Like as somebody who has suffered through kind of like the oil booms and oil crashes. So like I've been in real estate for 17 years. In 17 years, I've been through like 3 major up and downs, right? Like 06, 07, when I started, major oil boom here. Prices of housing went from like you could literally buy a single family home for 120 grand. Within a year, it was up $100,000. And then within another year, it was up almost another $100,000. So I got into the market in mid 06. I bought a starter home, so 1150 square foot, bi-level, no garage, no basement finish, but 2 bed, 2 bath for 220 grand. Actually, sorry, there was a garage built into that price. So there was a detached double garage built into that price. Within a year, or actually 8 months of that, I sold it for 310. I believe. And then, so anyway, it was really good for a couple of years. Prices shot way up because everybody was moving here because oil jobs were just abundant and you were making crazy money and you needed absolutely no education. By 08, 09, kind of everything had crashed and it was all coming back down again. And then we had a nice kind of downward spiral until about 2012 when it finally slowly started to uptick. And we had another boom in 14. And then another crash in 15, and then 15 to 19 was like horrendously miserable because it was oil crashed. We ended up with an NDP government that was a disaster. Yeah, start laughing on that, but we can get into that in another day. But by 19, like our market had bottomed out, and then of course COVID actually ended up being kind of the rejuvenating factor for our market out here. And then now, of course, then oil gets really good, and all of a sudden everything's booming again. So the problem with us is our market is so dependent, or was so dependent on oil, that like our housing prices were going up and down and up and down and up. And like there wasn't really another major sector. And so now the government actually, thankfully, is finally doing a better job of diversifying our economy out here so that we're not going to be so susceptible to oil prices going up and down, because they always do. It took them a while to figure that out. But anyway, so we should produce oil. I also believe that Canadian provinces should only be buying Canadian oil. Why is Quebec buying oil from the Saudis?
Yeah.
Right. And follow the money. You know damn well the politicians are being paid off. But and the fact that we can't build a pipeline through Quebec into the eastern provinces is absolutely ludicrous. Like, again, it should be completely, especially, and then let's get into the transfer payments on top of that, right? So now Quebec's taking all of Alberta's oil money, but they won't buy our oil. Right, like there's some pretty screwed up stuff that's happening there, right? And again, it's all just it's whoever's pulling the purse strings.
Is it just Quebec doing that? Are they the only area doing that?
Well, so Quebec refused to let us put a pipeline through to the eastern provinces, and so of course Alberta's issue with oil is that we have nowhere to we don't have any ports to get it there, right? So the pipelines now are like the Trans Mountain's being built to BC, so we can at least get it out that way. And then obviously we had the Keystone, I think, that was going down into the US. And for a bit there in 15, like everything just got shut down, right? And the second Biden got in, he shut that pipeline down completely. But the funny thing was Biden actually ended up helping us because he also stopped all the oil production in the US. So with Trump, it was like he just said, hey, go for it, drill all the oil you want. And so in 15, when everything crashed here, Texas was crazy. It was the Wild West for oil. They were drilling nonstop down there. There was no rules, no limitations, nothing. And so actually most of Alberta's oil sector packed up and moved to Texas. So all of our equipment, everything, all ended up down in Texas. And then as soon as Biden got in, he went, nope, no more oil.
They came back home?
Well, the price, some of it came home, but the pricing shot up because there was less supply. So, we were all screaming thinking, oh no, this is the end because our pipeline's gone. Well, it actually ended up helping us, believe it or not. But anyway, so back to your original question. I am in favor of also building renewable resources, but I think it's absolutely like anybody who says, oh, we can stop oil production completely, we don't need oil, like that's just bullshit.
Yeah. Well, it hopefully everybody understands that, because only 2% of the people answering thought that stopping oil production is a good idea.
Well,
so
me.
I wish the government would listen to that, because we're at 90%. Hey, let's become a world leader and also renew at the same time. So between those two answers, you got 90% of the people. So I just want everybody in power to know, if you ever were to listen to this, that Canadians 4-1 are in favor of getting into fairy dust and vegan protein over top of going and stopping oil. So it's really sad. I think I'm watching the pipeline. By the way, I just drove out to Abbotsford, and the pipeline's coming right through Abbotsford, the twinning right now. And it's crazy how long that project is taking. That's one thing. The cost overrun since the government took it over is interesting.
Well, there's a shocker.
But here's the issue with it, though, right? Like when you had Trudeau come in and he bought the project, that was a very interesting thing to do. Unfortunately, since then, I think the politics has gone the other way. I actually don't think it was the worst idea. I think the cost overruns and everything is probably something the government shouldn't get involved in twinning that pipeline. But the idea in the first place was, cool, stop whining about this. The government's just going to buy it and do it. And they very now quietly continued to do it the whole way through. So I think it's a good thing, because I think we should be getting more of our resources out to not only us, but the rest of the world, right? Like there's no reason. My gas, I don't know what happened yesterday. Gas came down 30 cents a liter in Vancouver. But it
was only $2. Yeah.
We were at $2.14 3 days ago. And this morning we're at $1.82.
What's gas for you right now, Andrew?
$1.44.
$1.44. Yeah, we're at like 180. Yeah.
So the provincial government last year cut all the provincial tax on fuel, just to help Albertans with cost of living increase, all this kind of stuff. And just because, again, like we are making money hand over fist with oil prices right now. So, and granted, oil's come down quite a bit, but it's still at a reasonable level. And so we've got big surpluses again, right? The economy's in good shape, and so they're and like provincially they keep trying to fight all these carbon taxes, but at the end of it, like there's just no jurisdiction to do it, right? So we just keep getting slapped with it, even though our premier here is attempting to fight it. So there's an effort happening, at least, just to, again, like cost of living is why everybody's coming out here right now. It's so much cheaper.
Do you think this time, with people going that way, not necessarily for oil, but just for cost of living, cashing in their Vancouver lottery, real estate lottery chips, and then moving that way, do you think that's going to change Alberta? Do you think there's going to be more staying power this time around? Or is it just until things kind of balance out everywhere else that...
I honestly don't think things will ever balance out. I think Vancouver and Toronto are always going to be more expensive markets. Just like Toronto, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Toronto. Like, it's wet and it's cold and the traffic's insane, but that's just me. Vancouver's such a gorgeous city, right? Like, it's a really beautiful place to live. Again, couldn't deal with the rain all winter and the gloomy days and all that. But though, I mean, they're just bigger centers, right? There's more jobs, there's more industry, there's more everything. And so I do believe Alberta will continue to grow. But people are buying the weather in Vancouver largely.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Toronto, I mean, Tom, you tell me, I'm not sure what they're buying there, because I don't think their winters are that much better.
I'll tell you what they're buying. Let me ask you, where is Taylor Swift playing her only 6 Canadian shows next year? This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Realty Ninja. Hey, real estate agents, I bet you didn't get into the real estate industry to try to become a web developer. Realty Ninja will help you build a beautiful website for your business without becoming all techie, because me and Steve are certainly not techie. They'll set up your entire site for you, they'll migrate the content from your current site, and they'll take care of all the back end, switching the domains, all the things that you don't want to do, they'll take care of for you. Their team of in-house designers will make your new site match your current brand and help you stand out from your competitors. Best of all, Realty Ninja offers a free unlimited trial that lets you build out your website, and they do not charge you until you're ready to launch. That's right, they are so confident in their product and that you're gonna love the website that you build with them. They will not charge you until it's ready to launch. They don't even take your credit card details. Listeners of the Tom Storey Show will not only get an unlimited trial before you launch, but if you go to realtyninja.com/Tom, you will get 20% off your first year after you launch. A beautiful, functional, and professional website is absolutely a must in today's real estate landscape, and Realty Ninja delivers. So go to realtyninja.com/Tom for 20% off your first year. That's realtyninja.com/Tom. And now back to the podcast. In Toronto, because it's the center of Canada and she knows it, and then she's not even going to Vancouver. That's all I'll say. That's my only response.
We were close.
Seattle, fine.
I think you need to differentiate though, because, and this is going to get me in so much trouble with the people in Toronto, but in
editing team, get ready to clip.
They already hate me. It's fine.
In spending time in Toronto, downtown Toronto is one of the coolest places I've ever been, and the surrounding areas. And I apologize, Markham and Mississauga and everywhere else around. It just feels terrible. Like when you go there, you're just like brake lights, and the tallest thing you can see is, I don't know, the power lines, right? It feels like you're in what's that show? The Office, right? It's Scranton, Ohio. Like it's just all 2-story office buildings for as long as you can see.
Steve, is that not where you live? Is that not the version of where you live?
No, man, I can see the mountains from anywhere.
Okay, you guys got mountains. We can't, we don't have that. But everything else, take away the mountains. Is that the only difference?
I don't know.
For the suburbs of Toronto. You guys got traffic.
We don't have the traffic you guys have.
Yeah, fine.
We don't have. I've pulled out of conferences or whatever to try and get to the airport at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and it takes me 45 minutes to get to the first traffic light. Like, your traffic is crazy.
It's absolutely insane.
But it's not. Well, your traffic is terrible also in the city, but I feel like there's just more life in the city. The downside of Vancouver is there's no culture here. Right? I know you complain about that, Tom, when you come this way. You're like, you go downtown on a Thursday night for a cocktail and there's like nobody out. Or the restaurants close at 10 or 11 and there's nothing going on. There's no culture. And that is
don't come to Red Deer, buddy.
Well, this is the issue I think a lot of people are going to have. So I guess 2 questions. One, do you think this cycle for Alberta is going to end differently than other cycles, and it will hum along better because people are trying to get there? And then 2, do you think there's a bunch of people that are going to leave because the small town life is a wonderful thought until you get there sometimes and you're used to that big city and you realize we're doing another night staying home with the kids watching Netflix or whatever?
I think like again, we're not getting a lot of like the big city people are not coming to the smaller towns. Most people are going to Calgary or Edmonton, where Calgary, there's lots to do. Edmonton, there's lots to do. Red Deer, not so much. For me, like I've got 3 young kids. I don't have a social life or time to go out or energy to go out anyway. So that doesn't bother me. I don't need nightlife. And so for people that, don't thrive on that, a small town is fine, right? Like it's just, I don't need to go out every night I don't need to have something to do every night of the week. I live in a hockey rink 15 times a week, usually between 3 boys. So, yeah, like that's the downside to a small town, right? There's not ever going to be a lot of that, but there's tons of it in Calgary. Like Calgary is, I don't know that I would say the downtown, but there's lots of stuff going on in Calgary.
How far is the drive to Calgary from where?
It's about an hour and a half to get into downtown.
All right.
So it's an hour to the edge of the city, an hour and a half into downtown. But honestly, like if we want to go out and do something, to drive to Calgary is really not a big deal. In the wintertime, sometimes it's not great, but otherwise it's all right there. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of people, I guess, coming here and leaving. I think a lot of people are going to get out here and realize that, there's actually a lot here. It's a super beautiful province, like mountains, prairies, the winter's tough. That might be the one thing I think that might send people back, and more so to BC, because again, Tom, my winter experience in Toronto is limited, but I remember going there and we were at a conference and I looked at the thermostat and it was like -8, and I'm like, oh, -8. I'm like, that's super warm, right? Like I'm just gonna throw on my sport coat and walk across the parking lot. I could not believe, like I was chilled to the bone. It was so cold.
It's a different type of cold.
It's wet cold, and it is awful. Like here, it's so dry, right? Which you can go out in -30, and it's not pleasant, but you can put, just dress for it, and you can go hang out outside for a bit, and it's really not the end of the world. And you come in, and as soon as you're in a warm house, you're good to go. Right?
We did that. I want to say the 100th Grey Cup was in Toronto, so we went there for it, and we did the for anybody that doesn't know, at Grey Cup, the fans do a parade. So it's like it's just the fans march from one spot to the stadium. And we went and did that, and it was -3. And that was the coldest -3 I've ever felt in my entire life. Because here, -3, you're like, okay, still jeans, maybe boots and a winter jacket, a scarf, I'm good. And there I was just like, by the time we got to the stadium, we were beside ourselves at how cold we were.
The wet cold it's a whole different beast. And so the other side of it too, like the snow here. Oh, the snow is not fun. And it's fun for the first little bit. The kids love it. They can go sledding and there's outdoor rinks everywhere and whatever. But by about February, you're just done with it. You're like, okay, no more. But then it'll drag on for another 2.5 months. Mm-hmm. So that honestly, like that, I think that's the biggest shift. And for a lot of my clients that have moved out here, like I'll talk to them and just be like, hey, how was the winter? And actually most of them so far, I was surprised. Like most of them been like, actually not bad, right? Like I think they're mentally prepped for it when they come out here. And so that largely in my mind, like that's kind of the biggest downfall to coming out here is the winter is not great. The summers are beautiful. But winter's tough.
The first time trick-or-treating in the snow must be like a new experience though.
So when we were kids, like, cause it's about 50-50 if we've got snow at Halloween or not.
Okay. Yeah.
Some years you do, some years you don't. I remember like as a kid, we'd go out and it'd be like, there'd be 2 feet of snow on the ground and it's -15 and you're wearing a costume. Your parents like, put your winter coat on over your costume. And you're like, well, you can't even see the costume. So like I said, it's 50-50. And actually probably I'm trying to think for years that we've been going out with our kids. I think in the last maybe 11 years, we've had 1 year with snow or 2.
Okay.
So we're not consistently getting snow anymore. Like I in October, it does happen, don't get me wrong, but I build an outdoor rink for our kids, and it's got to be about -10 consistently for the ice to stay frozen. And usually we're up by about mid-November to third week in November. But -10 out here, honestly, with the amount of sun that we get in the wintertime is actually quite nice.
That's what I've said about Vancouver is even if Toronto's freezing in the winter, I get in my car and I put on my sunglasses because it's sunny. It's not just gray and damp and, but okay, enough about the weather for a second. I want to go back to real estate. Not all, but a good percentage of our listeners, Steve, because we've looked at the back end numbers, are Ontario and BC, right? It makes sense because they're the biggest markets, right? Now, when people buy real estate in those markets, they've come to expect that the prices of the real estate that they buy will go up over a period of time. If they own those assets for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, history has taught us, although we've had moments in time where it certainly does drop off, it can build a lot of wealth for you. Andrew, I remember we were talking at a conference once and I was showing you the thing that we would send our clients like updates on their property values, like a screen CMA where I'd show them the and you put up your hand, you're like, what if their property dropped? Like, are you still sending this video? So for people that are moving out your direction, do they know? Because right now, the pandemic plus, would you call right now an oil boom or just a good oil market?
I don't know if it's a boom. Like, the interesting part about this is, before with the booms, we've never had like this volume of people moving here.
Sure.
And the reason that people are moving here is different than it was before, right?
Yeah.
Like, before,
It's an
when it was
affordability
booming,
boom.
Yeah.
well, yeah, basically. And before, like, when people were moving here, it was just for oil jobs. That was the main driver of why people were coming out here when that was happening. This time it's completely different, right? Like, everything's cheaper.
But
And
the people that are moving out there, do they know there's a possibility that their house doesn't change in value for 10 years? Now, obviously it could go up, it could go down, anything could happen, who knows? But your market has not performed like our markets in terms of appreciation, right? And
No.
that must be a different mindset for people. Yes, it's cheaper and you can get in and you can own it, you can pay it down and you can own that piece of real estate at that price one day. But a lot of our markets, people built wealth just jumping up the market because they kept doing really well. You get what I'm saying with that?
yeah. Yeah, and that's largely just demand, right? Like, and so with what's happening right now with international immigration, when there's that many people coming into the country, right? And I think it's been like 1.2 million now for the last couple of years, people coming in. There's just going to be a shortage of housing everywhere, right? And I think a big portion of what's happening is these people are coming in and they're going, I can't afford Vancouver, I can't afford Toronto. What are the other options, right? Well, so they're going to start looking at your cheaper markets. Job market in Saskatchewan, I don't think is super great, and I don't know what Manitoba's like, but right now, Calgary is the hottest market in the country. There's lots of jobs here. The economy is good. Like, and that's the thing. Like, unemployment out here is like 5.7%, which basically means it's 0.7% because you just generally assume 5% of people don't want to work, right?
Yeah.
So it's easy to come here. It's easy to get a good paying job, and it's still drastically more affordable than BC and Ontario. So I honestly think, just because we are such an underpriced market compared to most other provinces, we are going to see a longer term push on prices out here. And it'll hit a point where, and similar to how you guys are, right? Like, I think Ontario's kind of in a correction right now, and BC might be as well, right? Where your guys' prices are starting to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's just, the demand has fallen off, right? Because everyone's gotten, okay, no, it's too unaffordable. We're going somewhere else, right? So presumably it will hit a point out here where people go, okay, that's enough. We're not willing to go there at that price point.
Yeah.
Right. And I would generally assume that price point is still going to be less than Toronto and Vancouver's price point. But, does the median house price in Calgary need to be 850 or 900 grand before people start going, okay, it's unaffordable, I'm not going there anymore? Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the answer to that is. And so long term, if you've owned real estate here for the last 20 years, it's more than doubled, but not, I think in the last 20 years for you guys, some of that stuff's probably 5-6 times up from what it was, right? Like, so are we going to see that level? No, I don't think we will. But I do think it's going to go up.
Let's play a quick game here, because probably everybody's stats are out now for the month, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
We're far enough into the month. We'll start with Tom. Tom, what did, generally speaking, over the market, don't break it up into asset classes or anything, but generally speaking, what did prices do last month?
Okay, so this is the first time I've been able to say this in a long, long time. The entire city of Toronto, across all asset classes, is now in balanced market territory. We're at 4.2 months of inventory. We were at 2 months of inventory for most of the year. I know you said don't get into specifics, but condos are now the high end of balance. They're not quite buyers, but it's building. So we had more inventory, less sales. Prices were up year over year, but that stat is useless. And here was the big one, is that the September numbers for every asset class, I literally did a video on this 20 minutes ago. That's why it's fresh in my mind. The September numbers were higher than August. I was going to be very concerned if the September numbers dropped from August, because that rarely ever happens. They did go up.
Sorry, price or sales?
Price, they were down in sales.
Okay. So same in my market.
Yeah.
We went down a couple of months in a row in price, and now basically sideways. How about Red Deer or Central Alberta?
We're at about a month and a half inventory right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
That's not-
it's tough right now, because like what I'm finding in our market is people want turnkey move-in ready. And I think largely when you're coming from another province, the last thing you want to do is come over here and have to renovate something, right? Because you don't know any trades, you don't know where to go, you don't know what the cost is going to be like. And access to money right now is not great either, right? Like you're not going to go get a line of credit at 10 or 12% to renovate your house anymore. You want that built into your mortgage at 5.5% or whatever, even though that, that rate is still high relative to what we're used to. It's still much better than getting a line of credit. So the turnkey move-in ready stuff right now is just like, boom, gone. It's like first couple days. For reference sake, like our single family detached from 300,000 to 400,000 sold 97% of the inventory last month.
Wow.
So
and who's buying that? Who are the buyers?
Everybody.
Is it it's all end users though? Any investors in that market?
No, there's no investors right now. So it's interesting. Like I've got a couple legal suites for sale, and a year ago that stuff was flying off the shelf. Now at the interest rates, it just nothing cash flows right now.
Yeah,
and
even in Red Deer, nothing cash flows.
No,
with 20%,
like
with 20% down is the metric.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing is cash flowing, and rent is pushing up. But it's still not there, and nobody wants to buy this stuff. Like when you can put it in a high interest savings account and get 4% right now. Like I'm getting 4.2% right now in a savings account. Oh. So like you're not going to buy a break even rental property or a property that's going to cost you money out of pocket, right? Because here, like in your guys' markets, they may speculate, well, in a year from now it'll be up $100,000. Well, that's not likely to happen here, or not at that rate, anyway. So what I'm finding is there's no investor market at the moment. I do think if we see rates drop. Like if that happens next year, I think the prices will have appreciated enough and the rates come down, then I do think we'll see a surge in rental interest again.
Yeah.
And people who own stuff right now, like the biggest thing that we ran into in July and August, I sold probably 15 rental properties for clients who their mortgages were coming up for renewal. And at 2%, it worked great. But now at 6%, they're going, not a chance. I'm getting out of this thing while I have a chance, right? And they're actually making money on them too for a change, which is, a nice shift. So the rental inventory is actually getting thinner and thinner, which is just going to drive the prices up even more because vacancy here is basically 0%.
Yeah. We talked about that in the recent episode that it was the same thing was happening to me, but with condo rentals. And it wasn't not so much that they were coming up, but that they were on a variable and they're already feeling the heat. And we were then selling them, and mostly end users were buying them, right? So it was taking the rental inventory off the market. But for a while, because even if it gets back to a point where the interest rates come down, still, if I'm an investor mindset looking at Red Deer, I'm pretty much just looking at cash flow, right? That's my guarantee, not price growth, significant price growth at least.
Again, it depends on how long you're going to own it. And it just depends on what you're used to too, right? Like your guys is, you're saying you've got 4 months of inventory and everybody's screaming like, oh, the market's so bad. The market's so bad.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
In 2019, I would have killed to have 4 months of inventory.
Yeah.
Like that would have been an amazing market, right? Like it's all relative to perspective. And like, it's funny because I hear you guys say, oh, the market's so slow. And then I hear you have 4 months of inventory. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Like you guys have no idea.
Spoiled.
Right? Like this is the first time in years and years, like 2015 to 2019, all I did was tell people their house was less than they paid for it. Like you get really good at having that conversation because literally every single person you've gone to see, unless they've owned their house since like the early 2000s, everybody was in negative equity. Right?
I wonder if all the Alberta realtors came to Toronto and BC, you guys would thrive. Because our market that we think is bad, you've been through 10 times worse, and you've had the tough conversations where most of our conversations the last decade have been like, well, we got 3 offers, which one do you want? Right?
Yeah,
I think you guys would do so much better in our markets than the people starting that don't know what's going on.
Think of that, Tom, though. You have like 20% of your agents or whatever that have been in the business for less than 5 years, and that's all they've ever done.
Yeah.
Right. That's all they've ever done. It's crazy. And they don't understand. I was doing a deal with a guy and I said, it's not as easy as it used to be. So let's grind this out. Buyer and seller are going to take some time to get together. So let's negotiate this for 4 or 5 days. I'm like, it's like it used to be, man. And he's like, used to be. I've been in this business for 1.5 years.
Do you need insurance? The answer to that question is obviously yes, of course you do. Whether you are a tenant, landlord, or homeowner, you need to insure your property and belongings. And when I insure my investment property, personally, I choose Square One. Square One is affordable online insurance for everyone. If you apply for your Square One insurance policy using the link in the description of the show notes, listeners of the Tom Storey Show can receive $20 off right now, simply by going to squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show. Square One is no joke. I personally use Square One for my landlord policy on my investment condo. I picked Square One because they were easier to work with than other insurance companies. And when I had an issue with my previous policy coverage in relation to my Strata's coverage, Square One was the insurance company that came up with a solution for my insurance problem at an affordable rate. Online quotes take less than 5 minutes with Square One. Get your home insurance quote today at squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show and save $20.
He's like, I don't know what it used to be. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thanks for at least admitting that. I want to give you my quick kind of market update here for what's going on here, because we are seeing a big slowdown. But every single thing, I actually got accused of this in the video, is like, oh, you're flip-flopping now on what you think the market's doing, because I'm showing signs that, the market's not going to do well over the next 2 years, at least, maybe 3.
What does not well mean? Just not go up in price or go down in price significantly?
I think there's a chance that if we can't get this inflation taken care of by mid next year, that we're going to see some real issues with pricing. It's not going to make it cheaper, though, dummies. It's only going to make your payment stay the same or higher and then bring down the house prices slightly. So if you think you're getting ahead, you're not. But what we noticed is the fall market never started. It just didn't start. We continued summer. We started getting a lot of listings coming on. So the listing to sale ratio skewed by about 500 listings. So we're coming close now in my market to that magic 6,000 where things start to really balance out nicely. 5 month supply, everybody's happy. Buyers and sellers both know what to expect. But then, so I'm sitting here going, oh, this is going to be a slow fall. And then all of a sudden my team has 6 pending offers, buy, sell, whatever. And then yesterday, you know how your office, I don't know if your guys' office does this, but you get like the update and all the recent like sales that your office did that day. So that email comes in and it's
a big one.
There hasn't been more than 2 or 3 sales registering a day. And yesterday there was like 20. So our team has like 6 pending transactions out of nowhere. And then the whole office seems to be doing kind of the same thing. And now I'm just trying to figure out, I think there's a little bit of shock. It's maybe those first sellers that are smart enough to go, I should probably just, take the 30 or 40 grand less than I want and start moving now. Could be that. Or just get the thing moving, because the people holding out for June prices, good luck, guys, right?
Yeah,
we're not going to be there for a while.
Oh.
So we've seen this kind of little frenzy come on. So I don't know if it's a end or the beginning of the fall market that came late, or if it's this frenzy of people going, okay, this makes sense, or if it's a frenzy of buyers that want to get in before their 7% rate comes around, because we are heading, if by the time this is out, we might be over 7%.
Well, I just got quoted on a bunch of rates for my upcoming mortgage renewal, and one of them started with a 7, which I'm not taking. But and the ones that I'm looking at are in the mid 6s right now. It is what it is.
Investment property though?
No, man, that's my house.
Oh, seriously?
Well, I'm not taking any of those. I'm going to have some conversations and talk to some other people, but it's just an initial, here's the rates, sir. I don't know you, here are the rates. And I think the 5-year fix was lower. It was, I got to take a look again, but the 3-year fix was 6.5.
So just for the record, Andrew, last year at this time, I told him to take a 5-year fixed at 4.79 and he didn't do it. So I will go on record as being right this time.
I just renewed so I just renewed in June on a 2-year at 5.55. And at the time, I was just gritting my teeth going, man, that is awful. And then now I'm looking at it going, glad I did that.
Pretty good, right? And that's where I think we're going to be in trouble, is where we end up on the other side of the halfway through 2025. So let's say 2 years from now, and all those 2020, 2021 purchases where those people aren't paying attention. That's where I see problems coming in the marketplace. So let's do this game then. Andrew, are you seeing, or do you suspect that you're going to have an affordability issue paying monthly bills where you are?
I think you're going to get that everywhere, right? Just depending on how people manage their money. I mean, from a relativity standpoint, like it's going to be cheaper here than anywhere else, right? For the most part, other than maybe Saskatchewan. Although I mean, Saskatchewan's real estate prices aren't really that cheap either. So I think you're going to see it everywhere, right? Like it's just going to be compounded in all these provinces and all these people, and it's just like now I was reading something this morning that they're talking about cranking up the carbon tax again and a bunch of this other crap, and I'm just going like, are you freaking kidding me? Like he is trying to bankrupt people. Like I don't know what the hell the politicians are thinking, but the whole it just makes me think back to that whole like, you know, you will have nothing and you will like it or you will be happy. They're just pushing for it, right? Like let's just see how far we can push people. Which I mean, I look at it and I'm like, keep pushing, dumbass, because you're just going to get knocked out, right? Which finally people argument. Might have enough brains to get him out of there. So
that's my argument with oil and gas. Like you need energy to be cheap because otherwise you crush the bottom end, right? You absolutely crush those people. And rather than find a solution for climate change that doesn't crush the people at the bottom end, we've picked the easiest route, which is more tax. Which, by the way, probably isn't going to do a darn thing. Like when the GST was brought in, the GST was sole responsibility of the GST was to pay down our debt, our national debt.
How's that going?
Never a penny of the GST was put towards that. And guess what? Carbon taxes are going to be the exact same thing at 61 cents a liter.
Well, I've been saying that for years. It's just the whole carbon tax. Like I don't believe for a second that he's putting any of it towards anything that's actually helping with carbon, right? Like he's just spending and spending and spending, and he's got to find any solution he can to get more tax base.
Yeah.
Right. And like the funny thing is, like they talk about, well, inflation's not going down. A big part of that's energy pricing. Well, it's freaking carbon tax that's jacking up the inflation.
Yeah.
So he's the one doing it, right? Like it just the whole thing boggles my mind. And you know, it's funny too, like since COVID and since Trudeau went on this spending spree of doling out money everywhere, like he sure shut the hell up about oil real fast, right? Because when he first got in there, everything was, I'm shutting down the oil sands and I'm shutting down the pipelines and, you know, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, great. Where does most of your tax revenue come from, right? Like it's $30 billion a year that Alberta is paying in transfer payments, right? And that's largely generated by oil and gas revenue. Right? Like, how can you shut that down? You're going to ruin the entire economy. It just doesn't make sense, right? And like I said, since now he's got no money or he's spending it all and we've got this insane debt, like suddenly we don't hear a word about oil anymore, right? Nobody's trying to shut down the oil sands.
That's where the fairy dust and vegan protein comes in, because the voting base is all around the major cities that don't understand that the world runs on energy and food, right? They don't get that. They like to think that, you know, buying a fake leather jacket is better than buying a real leather jacket, and it makes everybody feel good. And they don't realize something as simple as a fake leather jacket is made with petroleum products. So they just don't get that every single step that's being taken right now is only increasing costs until we get to a spot where things start to crack and break. And then you're going to see those people change mindset, which I think the polls are showing that the mindset's being changed. Unfortunately, we have somebody propping up the current situation.
Who's going to be the leader of Canada in 2025?
What part of 2025?
I don't know.
November, October, September.
I don't know. Whatever it falls. Yeah, whenever it falls. You think we're going that direction? The other, it feels like it from the conversations I'm having with everybody. Even people that are very hardcore liberal are saying like, well, maybe someone other than him. Actually, interestingly enough, I didn't bring this up yet. Steve, I don't know, Andrew, if you've seen this. Trudeau put in a bill that says that you have to register your podcast in Canada. Yeah. Do you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have thoughts on that? Because I've read both sides of it, the aggressives on both sides. And the one side is like, this is the beginning of tracking everything. There's no way we're doing this. And the other side is like, listen, guys, he's asking for your address, like the title of the show and what your name is and your phone number. It's not that big of a deal. But then the other side,
he wants to know exactly where the dissenting opinions are. Dissenting opinions, sorry. He wants to know exactly where their address is. Weird.
CSIS going to be knocking at your door here after this one comes out. Or my door maybe.
So I saw somebody do, and I think it might have been some crazy wacko like the Toronto Sun or somebody, but they were doing like, they went over the CRTC's website for information on this stuff, and it's like archaic. So they're a bunch of, it's like, you know, when they have like in the States and they have like some congressional hearing and they're like, can you please explain us what the internets is and how this is all gonna, how do I get on the internets? And it's like, oh, okay, guys, you don't even know what you're doing, right? You have no idea what you're messing with. And I think here's the question for most people is that, and then the Google and Facebook news thing, is that stupidity or smart by design?
Communism starting. That, you know what, like the whole, it's funny because back when, you know, the economy here was bad and I was a disgruntled Albertan, I'd come out to these conferences in Ontario and whatever, right? And I'm sitting here going like, okay, you guys are not seeing the media on Trudeau that we see.
Yeah.
It's very, very filtered, especially in the East. It's very filtered, right? Like all these scandals, all this kind of stuff that was going on, we're getting blasted by it out here. We all know about it. And I go there and I'm like, are you, like, you know about this, right? And people are like,
but it's also just
mean?
It's also the other side of the teeter-totter, right? Like you guys are only getting fed that and you aren't told the crap that, you know, Harper was doing, which Harper was doing some terrible crap too, right? So it is a matter of like,
don't speak of Stephen like that.
Hey man, we do not vote people in here, right? We vote them out. Harper, everybody got sick of. Trudeau, everybody's going to get sick of. They're going out the door. We like kicking them out more than we like inviting them in. And that's just the way it's going to go. It's going to continue. That is the most Canadian way to vote that there possibly is.
No, I agree. And at the end of the day for Trudeau, like, brilliant on his part, because when you own the media, you control what gets out, right? Like there was, you know, like the whole blackface thing. I could not believe that did not blow up into something so much bigger, because if Harper had done it,
yeah,
true.
Oh my Lord, like it would have been next level, like apocalypse. And Trudeau just comes up and it's like, yeah, he did it. And that's the end of it. You don't hear any more about it. Right?
Yeah. Even the Speaker of the House thing that just happened, right? Like everything that this government does, they seem to skate on. And then my question there is, well, so most Canadian prime ministers resign due to scandal, actually. Most of them. Almost every single one of them, I'm pretty sure. And then, okay, so if he were to resign, what do we get stuck with? Freeland for a year and a half? Does anybody want that? I don't think so. So I'm just trying to figure out if it was anybody else in that position, the party would have ousted them by now. And that's where the crazy conspiracy guys get to come in and talk about the World Economic Forum and how that's who's in there propping this thing up. And then you find out, if you just Google the World Economic Forum, that Chrystia Freeland's on the board of directors. So it is all craziness. I just don't understand how he can stay in power when so many Canadians are angry.
Well, I don't understand how so many people have let so much stuff go, right? Like I honestly, he's done so much unethical stuff that nobody else would get away with, and yet somehow he has. Like it's hard not to believe that there's not, you know, strings being pulled behind the scenes there, right? Like in my opinion, again, disgruntled Albertan, but like he is the by far worst prime minister in Canadian history, next to his dad, who's number 2. Like it's unbelievable the amount of stuff that he's gotten away with. It blows my mind every day.
Andrew, when you say that we're getting fed different stuff over here in Toronto than maybe you are you watching a different, so like what we have CTV, Global, and CBC essentially are like the news networks. What are you guys watching the same stuff? Is there a different news network I don't know about in Alberta that's feeding something different, or it's just different anchors saying different things on the same networks? Is that what you mean?
Well, you can't watch any of those stations because Trudeau owns all of them, right? Like he literally controls the media in the entire country. So like, I can't stand the CBC or anything they say, but there's actually, funnily enough, and this is now getting a little bit far right wing, but there's a news outlet in Alberta called Rebel News, and it's just like the most anti-Trudeau propaganda. Like, and it's great. Like, I enjoy it thoroughly because I hate the guy. But it's funny that it seems like, and again, you stop it on social media and Facebook, you're not going to see all these stories anymore, right? Like I said, he's just controlling what people are seeing.
There's less of that than you think, though. There's way less of that than you think, because the negative Trudeau stories are starting to come out. And so I think it's much more of something like the CBC feels the wind shifting, and they're going, if we want to keep our jobs, we probably better start saying some nice things about Pierre, right? Like that's more of the way it ends up going. I just think that there's the news is also going to give more of what their listeners want to hear. And the big audiences are in Toronto and Vancouver. So they are going to pander to what they think the political beliefs are of those people. And the same can be said for Alberta. So even any messages that get through there are going to be skewed towards the viewer.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I mean, he's, like I said, nobody likes him out here. If they do, they don't admit to it. Like the amount of the F Trudeau stickers on the back of trucks out here.
Okay,
like, it's every third vehicle.
This is how you know that's the case. So I out in the parking lot here, there's one of those, but it's to this point in Surrey and in Delta and in Vancouver, the F Trudeau stickers are limited still to Dodge pickups, right? So
that's not wrong out here either.
That is the lowest common denominator of pickup, by the way. Dodge pickup is on the bottom, right? And then Ford, and then Chevy pickup is up top, right?
Oh, so Chevy's above Ford?
You're from BC. You don't get to comment on pickup trucks.
100%. So here's what I'm saying. When those stickers start going past the Chevys and then into the sedans, that's when you know we have problems.
All right. Okay. I love the political talk. Just for the last, we can keep going down. The thumbnail
for this is going to be fantastic. Just so you know. So what does the next little bit look like? In a few weeks, we're going to have another interest rate announcement, October 25th. I'm anticipating a 25-pointer. I've heard some people say 50 points is a possibility. I'm not hearing as much hold anymore. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that?
I tend to think that it's probably going to be the 0.25. At this point, like, who knows, right? Like they keep 1 month inflation is down, the next month it's back up again, right? It's all over the map, and like. In Alberta, it's worse here because we've got people coming over here with money, and so consumer spending out here hasn't slowed down hardly at all. Mm-hmm. And when people cash out their Vancouver and Toronto properties, like in 2022, when I was dealing with this, when this kind of wave of people started coming in, a lot of them were selling their houses out, in Toronto, BC for $1 million, $1.2 million. They're coming out here and buying an equivalent house or a nicer house for $500,000, and they're
mortgage free.
Yeah. They're mortgage free and they're pocketing $500,000 to $700,000, right? Yeah. So a lot of them were padding retirements. They're doing a whole bunch of stuff. And so, consumer spending's not down. Well, of course they're not, because the people that are coming, or a lot of the people coming here, have got tons of money. And that's just the people I've been dealing with. I wouldn't say that's necessarily the bulk. Because when you actually look at the immigration stats, it's like 61% of people are international immigrants. 31% are from largely BC and Ontario, but from other provinces. So the other province amount, I was surprised when I saw that stat. It was less than I suspected, but I think that's largely just because in Red Deer, we're not getting a lot of the international people. I think they're going to the Calgarys and Edmontons.
Do they get to Red Deer because we talked about, Ontario, BC, super expensive. Okay, I can't go there. Then you're like, well, I've heard good things about Calgary. But even though Calgary is still relatively way more affordable than our markets, it's still gone up significantly in price the last few years. Do they start Calgary and they're like, wait a sec, what's this over here? And then they get to Red Deer, or do they come directly? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, what's the path to Red Deer?
There's definitely some of that. Like a lot of the people I've talked to are just like, we don't live in a big city now, and we don't want to live in a big city there. Some of it's affordability. Like the interesting thing with Calgary now, so 12, 13 years ago, if you had said, hey, Andrew, I'm going to move to from Red Deer to Calgary, I would have said, okay, well, you'll buy, an equivalent house there for, somewhere on the outskirts of the city for about $100,000 more than what you'd pay for the same house in Red Deer. That number now is probably closer to 250, 300. And if you want to get in, I just saw a similar house, it was an older 1960s bungalow. It was renovated, it was about 1,200 square feet, single detached garage in the back of it, listed in Calgary for, I think, $890 on the west side of the city, which is a nice area, but I'm going that's maybe 450 in Red Deer, maybe. Right. So like some of those price jumps. Well, yeah. And so some of those price jumps, I'm just like, it blows my mind. But from what I'm being told in Calgary right now, like they're still getting 20 offers on every house and stuff is going 50 to 100 grand over list. Like we've never seen that in Red Deer. Like we're just not getting that. If we get multiple offers on stuff, it'll be like, and especially at the lower price points, if you get multiple offers on those 300-400s, you're dealing with first time buyers. They don't want to jack the prices way up. So, and you're dealing with 3 offers, not 30. Right. So people aren't getting to the point where they're, I'll just pay 50 grand over list to get this. It's not happening in this market. And I think that's going to be the same in all the smaller markets.
What I think is so interesting right now is that if you look at the larger markets, and me and Steve were talking about, our inventory levels are going up. Although still for us, it seems high. In general, it's probably not, but we've been spoiled for so long. But our markets are extremely expensive, and the inventory is typically going up. Typically, the inventory is tighter in our markets, even though it's expensive. But then in your market, where it's way less expensive, but then there's nothing to choose from. I feel like it used to be inverted. It would be like there'd be lots of inventory in the cheaper markets because no one was going there. But then in the more expensive markets, there was tight inventory, and that's what helped the prices hold or slowly go up. It seems like recently it's flipped. Because you used to have 4, 5, 6, 7 months of inventory for a long time until 2020. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd have to think back now. Like at one point, so just for equivalence sake, right? We're under 300 listings right now at the absolute peak of our listings in 2019. So 2019 was our bottom of the market. There was at one point like 926 listings, I think.
Okay.
So, more than 3 times what we're dealing with now. And back then, again, it was because everybody was leaving. There wasn't a lot of people coming in, so there was just a lot of vacant inventory. Like 30 to 35 to 40% of the inventory was vacant at any given time back then.
It was vacant.
Vacant.
They just
sitting empty. They just
left.
Out.
Really?
Yep. So it was huge. Like the vacant property numbers were crazy, right? And you got to think, like I always say, it's the desperate people in any market that will drive where pricing goes, right? So in those markets, when it's really slow like that, if you're a seller. If your house is sitting there vacant, you've already moved to another province and you're paying on another property, your motivation level is going to go up a little bit. And then those are the guys that are going to start dropping their list prices because they're competing with 20 other almost identical properties and there's maybe 3 buyers, right? Yeah. So how am I going to make my house more attractive to a buyer and make sure that I'm going to be one of the few sales that month? Well, I'm going to jack my price way down, right? And then equivalently, it's just going to push everybody down. So for you guys in your markets, like Steve, you said, are people jumping in front just to get it over and done with? I mean, that's the right play. If you're a motivated seller, that's the right play because honestly, in 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, it could be down 100 grand. So you taking that $40,000 loss up front is actually the smarter play. And it's the guys that hold on for too long that ultimately end up really getting hosed. And we dealt with it for years and years and years, right? Like it was always get in front of the market. Make sure that if we know that there's 3 of those properties that are going to sell every month, get in front of it. Make sure you're one of the 3. So, and it's just your guys as sellers, like it's tough, I find, because, and again, I've been in it where it's up and down so fast. It takes a while for the sellers to get their heads wrapped around it.
Yeah. We're seeing that right now.
Yeah. And I used to go to see people. So like, and it was the turn of the market was always the hardest spot. So, when we went from 2014 to 2015 into 2016, a lot of people still had the 2014 mentality in their head, right? So you'd go talk to somebody and be like, hey, I think, we list here. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, no, it should be this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, like the market is not like, they're like, no, the market's really good. And it's no, it's not, right? Because they're not paying attention to it every day. They've got it in their head. No, they're not, right? They're not, unless you're selling, you're not interested generally in what the market is doing, right? So they've still got it in their head that the market is hot. We should get 20 offers and it's going to sell for 200 grand over list, right? Like that was what you guys presumably are dealing with. Mm-hmm. So education is everything, but some people are willing to hear it and others aren't. And it's tough. Like that's a tough market to work in.
It is tough. And the reason for that is I kind of have this theory of who in the market knows what the market is doing first. So there's 4 people involved in the transaction. So there's the buyer, the seller, the listing agent, the buyer's agent, generally speaking. So generally speaking, in a transaction, the buyer is the first one to feel the shift in the market. Then it's the listing agent. Then it's the buyer's agent. The seller is last. Right? So the reason for that is the buyer, first of all, they see how their qualifications change. They know that things can change with their affordability, with price or things going up and down in interest rates or whatnot. They can also see if they have access to certain properties at certain times, whatever. Then the listing agent gets to go and see how many showings are coming in, right? Like we have 2 or 3 of the best properties right now. Like we are number 1 price point, and there are very few showings. So if you list the 20 properties for sale, we're number 1 or 2, and we're getting almost no showings. That's a bad thing. I can tell which way the market's going. Then the buyer's agent, after they lose out on a few or negotiate wrong or whatever, they catch on, and the seller is the one still holding on to what was available.
That was very, very well said, Stephen.
Or hey, I'm not done yet. Hang on. Or when the market's going up, they're blown away by how much they get, and the buyer's not blown away by how much they're having to pay. Right. So that's the order of the transaction. And as soon as the downside to that is some buyers aren't really buyers, and they're just trying to get 30% off whatever actual market is. And those guys are just dopes. So I'm glad I said something that you approve of, Tom Storey.
That was very smart. Very smart.
Only took 70 some odd episodes.
There's lots of buyers too that when they see what the market is doing, they see it's going down, they just sit and then they go like, okay, I'm just going to sit and watch a few of these properties for another couple months and see how much more they come down, right? So that's the other tough side, right? If they're not motivated buyers, they're just going to sit there and watch price drop after price drop after price drop, right? Like it's got to get to a point where they go, oh wow, that's actually a good price for that house.
That's
or
right
their
now
motivation's
for our
got to be
markets.
there. Yeah,
they don't ever
got to be there.
They don't ever do, because if everybody was that smart, they all would have bought December ago and still been in our market way better off. Right? They would have been, but they always keep waiting. I got one client who is still waiting, and he contacted me in the summer and he says, I really screwed up by not buying. This time I'm going to buy by September. He chose again not to buy by September. And I don't know. Listen, I'm not super bullish on the market for the next 2 years, but I'm more often wrong than I'm right in the market. And I was wrong this year in the market. So generally speaking, the market will come back, and I think that guy's probably going to be kicking himself. If he's not kicking himself on price, he's definitely going to be kicking himself on interest rate.
There was a pretty funny comment on one of our recent episodes that essentially along the line said, all the smart's money has already left. And I said, oh, I'm just curious. Did you do that? Did you sell your property? And the response back was like, oh no, I don't own. Like, all right, so all the smart money that all the other people you're talking to, but you didn't actually do the thing. So everyone's going to have their opinions. And we're seeing that a lot right now. It's like, anyone that buys now, just wait. It's going to get better for you. Potentially the price will get better for you. Potentially. In my market and Steve's market. Sounds like Andrew's market, it's not. It seems like it's going the other direction right now, or at least hovering. But the interest rates I don't think are going to help. Okay, what did we learn today, Andrew? I can't grow a beard. I'm sending Steve's home address to Trudeau directly. Red Deer is one of the most affordable places to live in Canada if you like small town living, and you're going to have to drive an hour and a half to get to Calgary. What else did we miss?
Chevys are the best truck.
I don't even know anything about trucks, but I would think Ford goes at the top of that list. No?
Yeah, you could be wrong, but you're right.
For sales, it does. Ford's the best-selling pickup truck in history.
Okay.
And I'm not a Ford fan, so.
Are you a Chevy guy?
I was a Chevy guy always, just because my uncle owned a dealership, so I just always bought those trucks. But I've also owned a Ram, which now that I learn it's apparently the bottom end. I guess. Thanks, Steve.
The bottom end. It's not so much that Rams are bad trucks; it's just the people that own Rams are the bottom end. So
I don't like your stereotype.
What a great way to wrap it up with our guest, eh? We're supposed to compliment the people we have on our show.
50% of the comments, if they stuck this far, are going to be like, you are correct. The other 50% unsubscribe. So we're going from 31% subscribe to 15% subscribe.
Okay, so I guarantee there's someone watching or listening to this that is in a bigger market, looking at prices, not liking it, has looked at Calgary, has looked at Edmonton, maybe hasn't looked at Red Deer, and now they're like, you know what? I like a calm lifestyle. I'm okay with the snow. I like those price points. Andrew has a good beard. How do I contact the guy in the middle of this screen?
My website is just andrewrussell.ca. 2 S's, 2 L's.
And
be
by
the
way,
easiest way.
I don't think we built you up enough. Are you not the number one real estate agent in Red Deer? Close to that? I'm pretty sure.
I sort of kind of track the stats. We're the number one Remax team, have been for, I don't know, 10 plus years. top 100 Western Canada, blah, 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 blah. Nobody really cares. At the end of the day, we know what we're doing. I've got a team. We're quite successful. And
here's what the Russell team does do for you, though. If you buy and you're from out of province, your first year, they will show you how to set up a backyard rink. So there, because that's the most Canadian thing of all time that no Canadians know how to do, except in Alberta and Saskatchewan. So
we tried to do it last year. It just failed miserably for us.
It's a lot of work, but honestly, and I mean, there's an outdoor rink every 300 yards in this city, but it's just, when you got young kids, they just throw on the skates, go in the backyard, and my wife can make dinner, and it's good. It's awesome. No supervision required. It's awesome.
It's crazy. We used to have there was one spot in Surrey where there was like some sort of like bird sanctuary, like kind of duck pond thing, and every year that thing was frozen over. You'd only get about a week on it, but every year that thing was frozen over, and I haven't seen anybody on that thing in 15 or 20 years now. So climate change is real, and we've been wrong this entire podcast.
Yeah, well, more fairy dust and vegan protein, it will be good to go.
Vegan protein will bring back the skating rinks.
Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Just a reminder that this episode was sponsored by Realty Ninja. If you're a real estate agent and you want to build a beautiful website, go into the first link in the description. Steve, you got any final thoughts here to wrap it up?
I did have something, but that's very good. We're happy to have Realty Ninja on board. They're fantastic dudes. I use them all the time. And we should probably... Okay. We didn't even get into steaks, speaking of protein. I had an Albertan on, didn't get into steaks. Oh, well, maybe next time.
We'll have you back to talk about why medium rare is the only way you should be cooking a steak. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. Have a great day, and we will see you next Sunday. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew. That was